What's up again, everybody? Today we are going to begin a series where we blitz through the entirety of the brand new Infinity Gauntlet set and give card ratings for every card in the set, except maybe basic actions. I may leave those out, I'm not sure yet. We are going to do something a little bit different this time. Instead of going through by rarity, doing all the commons and then the uncommons and the rares, we are instead going to group these by affiliation. So today we are going to talk about the brand new affiliation, the Infinity Watch characters. Just a reminder, we're using an A through F ranking system. A is the best of the best. These are cards that will see top level competitive play. B are cards that will see some play in the competitive scene, perhaps online doing some fun tournaments, but they are very strong cards in their own right. They may just not cut their way up into the top. C are great cards, cards you will fill up your team with. Oftentimes they'll be towards the back end of the team, or they're great cards in draft or sealed events. D cards are cards that you could put on a team and can function to a certain degree, but are just outclassed by something else that's already been created. Generally cards that you aren't going to pull out immediately because there is something better. You may give it a whirl and then you may put it back because eventually it just gets cut for the better thing. And F cards are cards that you use to make coasters out of, cards that are created just for the sole purpose of trying to win a game with them. Those are cards that you're oftentimes just going to put in the binder and never pull back out. Got it? Make sense? Good. All right, we're going to begin, but before we do, if you enjoy Dice Masters content, if you like this channel, and if you want to see this channel continue to grow, feel free to like and subscribe this video. Doing so helps this channel grow. It helps me out a lot knowing what you guys like and what you want to see more of. And if you hit the subscribe button, then we will hit our goal of hitting 1,670 subscribers, because right now we are one person away from that. We are at 1,669 subscribers. So if you want to be that top person that hits the button and pushes us on to our next goal, this is your moment. It's your time to shine. Seize the day and press the button. All right, I'm going to blitz through these rankings. Are you ready? I'm not going to spend a ton of time because we're going to talk about like 20 plus cards today. Let's go. Our list begins with Adam Warlock, Golden Gladiator, a 5-cost mask character. Obviously, all of these characters are going to be Infinity Watch affiliated. A 1/3/5/1/5/5/2/6/6 stat line and an ability that says Energize. You may reroll target opposing character die. This is honestly a pretty solid ability, and it's usually found in this set on 5 to 6 cost characters. There are other ways of triggering this exact same effect on other characters, like when fielded, and there are characters that do it slightly better. I would argue that a when fielded effect on Ebony Maw that does this is slightly better than an Energize effect here on Adam Warlock, but do keep in mind this is also a mask character, so it can play well in Modern with Asuka. You could even buy this in Draft and play this ability, and it would be pretty solid just because the body itself is solid, and if you get it on the Energize effect, then you're removing one of your opponent's character dice most likely, so I give this a C. Next up we have Doctor Strange Time Gem, a 4-cost mask character with a 1/4/6/2/5/8/3/8/9 stat line and an Energize ability that says draw and roll a die. That die can't be re-rolled this turn. It also has a really great global that says global pay a mask. Target character die must attack this turn. There are so many beneficial effects on this card just from missing it and getting to roll a die and getting 2 masks out of it, or rolling it and having a huge body in the field. Even just the global itself is so powerful, you're going to see that play in Modern, that it's hard not to give this card a B straight up. There's too many things going on that are good for it. The only really downside to this is that it's basically, if you roll it as a character die, it's basically just a big character that you have to pay a bunch to field. But in limited formats, you want big characters that threaten your opponent's board and make them chump block every turn. I will also say that if it did not have the global, this would probably be a C+ to B- card, but I will give it a solid B just because that global pushes it over the top, and that global will see play in Modern, as it has already on other cards. Next up is Drax the Warrior, a 2-cost shield character with a 1/2/4/2/3/5/2/4/6 stat line. He says Drax is free to field while you have an Infinity Watch character die in your used pile. He also has another great global ability that says pay 2 shields. Target character die gets +1 attack and +1 defense. This is not a meta-defining card by any means, but the fact that this is a 2-drop in a set that is full of high-cost characters means that you're going to want to pick up something like this in a draft or a sealed event, and it's going to do pretty well for you if you can grab another low-cost Infinity Watch character, of which there are a few that we will talk about here in a moment. And the fact that it's just a decently statted character for you makes this a C in my book. Speaking of 2-drop characters, Pip the Troll in Search of Warlock is a 2-drop shield character as well, with a really strange stat line of a 111, 012, 022, and no ability. This is a blank text card. So is a blank text 2-drop good? Well, that depends on what format you're playing. If you're playing in draft, it's actually pretty decent. I would give it like a C. And there are some synergies. As I mentioned, if you have this and Drax the Warrior on a same team, you can then buy Drax the Warrior and then buy a Pip the Troll later when you're ready to field Drax the Warrior, and instead of paying 2 and just putting a character die out there in the form of Drax, you're paying 2 to buy a Pip the Troll and fielding Drax for free. So you're netting an extra character, which worst case scenario either comes up as a body that's slightly better than a sidekick or comes up as 2 shields, which are just generally great. If you're playing this in constructed, then this is more like a D card because there's obviously things in that 2-drop slot that just do more. Next up is Turk Barrett Small Time Crook, a 4-drop bolt character with the 011, 012, 022 burst phase stat line that says energize. You may deal 2 damage to target character die. So how good is this? Well, honestly, not very good. It's way too expensive for 4, and while about 2/3 of the characters in this set will be KO'd by this effect on their level 1 character phases, it's still just not worth investing 4 into for the small body and the energize effect that just deals 2 damage. Now, maybe you're running this and building around it a little bit with more energize effects and energize synergy, and perhaps you're going to spring for it then, or maybe you're making it a little bit cheaper, but to me this is a D. Into the uncommons we go with Adam Warlock, Hero of Counter-Earth, a 4-drop mask character that says energize, move target character die from your field zone to your reserve pool. Now I know what you're thinking, when would that ever be useful? And let me tell you this, there's 40 cards in this set that have when fielded effects, and some of those are fairly easy to put together alongside of this, in the sense that they're cheap enough to get out there and then use this energize effect to pull them out of the field, then put them back in the field to trigger their effect again if they get stuck. Now, are you going to go to this immediately and like slap this on the team and have this be your linchpin? No, which to me makes this a C-. But can you use it? Yes, again, which makes this a C-. It may not be the most solid of C's, but it is functional and you can play with it. And I will say there is nothing quite like it, so it's definitely not a D card. Next up is Black Widow, Running in the Shadows, a 3-drop mask character with an 012, 022, 123 stat line that says Overcrush, and it also says Black Widow can only be blocked by sidekick character dice. Yes, I get it, the stats are not much to look at, but the fact that this has Overcrush and it has a stipulation where it can only be blocked by the lowest possible thing in the game, which is a sidekick, means that this is a legit win condition if you can just pump its attack. It's so cheap. You can get multiple of these Black Widows out in the field and you can do a variety of things to pump all of them or one of them. This is a legit win condition in semi-competitive teams, and I expect to see people build around this and try this in fun tournaments. I'm giving this a B. Doctor Strange, Worthy Sorcerer, is a 6-drop mask character, which says while Doctor Strange is active, for each mask energy you spend to purchase an action die or field a character die, deal 1 damage to target character die or player. Not much to say about this except that it's just plain good. It's so flexible. You can deal the damage to a character die on your opponent's side, you could deal it to your own character die, you could deal it to the player. It's just like a tune. In fact, it's so much like a tune, this reminds me a ton of the super rare Yanti's ability when you would buy action dice and just deal massive amounts of damage. Now, it's not nearly on that same power level, but it's just very reminiscent of that kind of a card. This is a lot more balanced, being a win condition that is a 6 cost, but there are a ton of mask characters that can go along with it. This is a solid B. Next up is Drax the Mediator, a 4-drop shield character that has the rush keyword, and this rushes for bolts. So if you haven't yet messed around with rush or seen any coverage on the rush keyword, I would first check out the rush explanation video that I made. Boiling it down, rush is a keyword ability that's very similar to swarm, except except this will trigger when you draw the rush die along with whatever it's looking for. So it'll draw you an extra die when this character sees a bolt character next to it in the clear and draw step. So Drax here is a 4-drop that's looking to rush off of bolts, and there's not a ton of cheap bolt characters that you really want to go and buy a bunch of in this set. I mean, you can really count them on one hand. There's like Rocket Raccoon, there's Turk Barrett's, you could even consider Angela in this, but that's really about it. Everything else is like 4 cost and above. And so a ramp engine that you're only probably going to buy 1 or 2 of, that works off of a few characters in set and not very many cheap ones, is just not as good as the others. But we should be aware that this also has that global ability that we found on the first one, so I give it some extra points. I give this a C-. There are better rush options in set. On to uncommon Pip the Troll, Prince Gofern. This is a 4-drop shield character as well, and it says while Pip the Troll is active, your opponents must pay 1 more to use each global ability. So this is essentially a reprinted ability of the old Oracle that we found way far long ago in the Batman sets. Back then, this ability was meta defining. It was played by like everyone on the tournament scene, and global abilities are just as relevant now as they were back then. I mean, look at what we saw in the most recent large-scale online tournaments. We saw Becky Lynch that used force block and doubling attack globals. We could see the use of static fields, I mean ramp globals, prepping. There's tons of globals that could be used and plan to be used, and this set has tons of globals in set. So it's hard for me to say that this card won't see play in mid to high level tournaments because it just turns off so many globals for your opponent by making them pay more. This is a solid A card. Get your hands on this one if you plan on playing in higher level tournaments, and be ready to tech this in if the meta is global heavy. The final uncommon is Turk Barrett, Aspiring Criminal. It's a 3-cost bolt character, and it says while you have a bolt in your reserve pool, prevent all non-combat damage to Turk. And on the level 3 face, it has a burst ability that says when fielded, prep a die from your bag. I gotta say, I don't love this card. It's a fine 3-drop in the fact that you could possibly be drawing and rolling a die from this, but outside of that, you're really just hoping that it has some sort of synergies with other Infinity Watch characters, because the while you have a bolt in your reserve pool ability doesn't really have much play. This to me is a quintessential D card. Outside of using that top face ability on the burst side, it really doesn't do much for you, so there's a lot better 3-drop options. Into the rares we go with Adam Warlock Soul Gem, a 5-drop mask character that says when Adam Warlock is KO'd by combat damage, move target character die to his card, and when fielded, return all character dice on this card to the field zone at the same level. Now you may be looking at this ability and saying, hey, that's kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy Adam Warlock that could like steal a bunch of your opponent's character dice and then put them down onto its card, and then you just like never field it, or maybe you like misdirect something else in, or misdirect it back in so you don't ever trigger the when fielded effect. And then thinking that, you may be like, oh yeah, this card's back. I loved this card from the previous. But look at the way it's worded. First of all, again, it has to be KO'd by combat damage. And then secondly, you can only take 1 target character die to its card. You can't take everything that dealt it damage like the previous one did. So if you like forced everything to block this, you're only picking like 1 character die to put onto its card. Now, maybe you run this and you just like put something out there and you make it attack into this, and then you steal their best thing. Well, then you can never field this again because they took misdirection out of Modern. There's no way to get this back into the field without triggering the when fielded effect. So once you've taken their best thing, this becomes like a dead die in your bag. You never want to field it on a character face. You're always trying to roll it as 2 masks, and it costs 5. So this card's really hard to use. Therefore, this is an F. You know what's not an F though, is Black Widow, Widow's Hunt, a rare 2-drop mask character that has Energize. Spin target opposing character die down 1 level. If that character die is already at level 1, spin it to an energy face of your choice. So many good things going on with this card. First of all, it's a 2-drop mask character, and there's tons of mask synergies out there. We've already talked about a lot of them. Second of all, it's an Energize ability, and it's a really good one too. This slots easily onto Asuka teams so that you can buy them at 1. It's a little bit of extra control when you're rolling this out on Asuka Asuka teams because you can possibly be spinning your opponent's sidekicks down and making them have less blockers, or you could be spinning down their bigger characters to make them smaller or just to remove them outright. The fact that this doesn't KO them and instead just spins them to energy means they're going to used after your turn is over, and that is insanely strong. I can see this card being very good in semi-competitive, and maybe it cuts its way up into competitive play. Probably just stays in that semi-competitive slot, which makes this a really solid B. Doctor Strange, Celebrated Neurosurgeon, is a 6-drop mask character that says energize, spin up to 2 target character dice, 2 energy faces of your choice. It also has the amazing global that is essentially a force attack. Pay a mask, target character die must attack. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at something that is essentially a giant body that costs a lot to field, or 2 masks and moving 2 of your opponent's character dice out of their field zone and onto energy faces of your choice. And usually that means onto really terrible energy faces for them that they can't use. So it basically just puts their character dice into the used pile, which is insanely good. But the question is, do you buy this for 6 just to use that really good energize ability? Possibly. If you're building around this in Modern, you can obviously make this cheaper with Asuka, and you can just buy this more easily when there's more cheap characters at your disposal. In Draft and Limited in general, it's a little harder to get to because it is 6 and it doesn't do as much as you'd like it to for a 6-drop, but you know, you are still making a big guy if you roll it, and you're removing 2 of your opponent's things if you roll it as energize, so it could be something you would reach for and actually buy in one of those limited formats. Therefore, this to me seems kind of like a nice solid C card. And on to perhaps the best card in the entire set, Drax the Pacifist, a 3-drop shield character that says when fielded, choose an opposing card, canceling all previous choices. Your opponent may not purchase or field that character until Drax leaves the field zone. Oh, did I also mention he has icing on the cake in the form of that same global that we've seen before. Pay 2 shields, target character die gets +1/+1. Okay, let's talk about the bad things on this card. It costs a lot to field. Okay, let's talk about the good things about this card. This card's insanely strong in the fact that you can buy this on turn 1. You can actually buy this and prep it with the Becky Lynch global. If you get this to land on turn 2, you can basically just stop your opponent from buying their win condition and then fielding their win condition. Your opponent's going to have to plan to have something on their team to remove this in some way, shape, or form. This is basically the new Shriek. This is an A+. You're going to see this on competitive teams, and you're going to see it pretty consistently. Speaking of cards that are really powerful, Pip the Troll Contagious Debauchery, which is an amazing subtitle. 5-drop shield character. It says when fielded, spin up to 2 opposing character dice, 2 energy faces of your choice again. So essentially what we see here is that 6-drop Doctor Strange ability we just talked about, now on a 5-drop on fielding costs that are super easy to manage, on something that we can easily cycle with like Nihilor Global or just any KO effect, and this outright just removes 2 of your opponent's things. Could be control pieces, could be win conditions, could be sidekicks for some reason if you wanted to do that instead. This card is super solid. The fact that it's a 5-drop is the only thing holding it back, but there's so many ways to buy 5-drops easily that really we shouldn't even consider that too much. The real question is this going to find a place on some meta team to where it's going to make huge impacts? And you do have to keep in mind that there are cards that can shut down when fielded effects back in the set, like Angela. But outside of those criticisms, I see this card as being very strong and very impactful going forward, so I give this a B+. And the final rare card for the video is Turk Barrett Infinity Watch, a 3-cost bolt character that says energize. You may deal 1 damage to target character die, and while Turk Barrett is active, when you roll 2 bolts on a die, you may deal 1 damage to target character die or to a player. So if we're looking at this in just the framework of limited play, it's pretty decent, pretty solid. You could pick this up and you could use it as a nice low drop 3-drop character. It wouldn't be the best card, and in fact if you were drafting I would probably pick this later than earlier, but in a pinch you could use this, and there's some synergies with the Infinity Watch affiliation. In Modern Constructed, you might be able to fit this onto some bolt-centric team where you're trying to roll bolts, or where you're oftentimes rolling bolt characters so that you can just use its while active effect and just get little extra chip damage on your opponent's characters or on their life total. So this is a possibility on that. Where this really shines is in Golden Age, and I kind of avoid talking about Golden Age, but I had a conversation about this card with Shadow Meld, and he basically broke it down to me where this essentially just slots onto the old school Manticore team. If you're familiar with old school Manticore from the original D&D set, this basically just makes that team disgusting. I won't go too much into it because I'm going to try to avoid talking too much about this card, but this is a really, really good fit onto essentially what is an infinite combo. So taking all that info and putting it together, I gave this a C for right now. We are into the super rares, and we start with Adam Warlock, leader of the Infinity Watch, 6-drop mask character. It says, while active, when a die with Energize is spent as energy and leaves the reserve pool, roll it. On any energy phase, use its Energize effect. So this is a card that literally lives and dies based on Energize and the Energize characters that you choose to put on the team. It's also important to note that this does trigger if your opponent uses an Energize effect. So if they're running Energize as well, you can take advantage of that. But really, this is all about what you put on your team as far as Energize is concerned. So I'm going to give this the rare build around rating. This is a card that you literally have to build around. This is a kind of like a weird, not sort of win condition unless your Energize effects are win conditions. To give this an A through F ranking just on its ability alone is sort of disingenuous to the identity of the card. So I'm giving this the build around. Black Widow Intelligence Assets is a 4-drop mask character that says while you have a fist in your reserve pool, Black Widow gets +2 attack, and then while you have 3 or more fists in your reserve pool, she gets an additional +1 attack. There's not much to say about this card except the fact that it's just not very powerful. It's super underpowered on the stat line, and then the ability itself just gives it a little bit extra stats, and that does not help a 4-drop purchase cost. This is an F. For our penultimate card, we have Doctor Strange, Trusting in Destiny? It's supposed to be Destiny. 6-drop mask character. While Doctor Strange is active, when you field an Infinity Watch character die, you may re-roll target character die. So this is the card that brings together all of this affiliation. This is the card that you look at and go, okay, if this is my win condition, what are some solid, low-cost Infinity Watch character dice that I can field constantly or cycle easily, that sort of thing. And so you look at this card, and then this is your frame of reference for all cards within this affiliation if you're looking to build around this card. And so here we are right at the end of this review, and we can see that there are some good options when it comes to low-cost character dice in the form of Pip the Troll and Drax, and there are powerful effects like when fielded effects on Pip the Troll the Rare, and even Turk Barrett to a certain degree is a low-cost character that you might want to put with this. Nevertheless, this is a pretty solid little win condition if you're looking to field a bunch of these characters and then push physical damage with the excess attackers after removing your opponent's blockers. I give this overall a B-. It can do some work as a win condition, and you're going to see it on some semi-competitive teams, perhaps just people playing around with this effect where you're just forcing your opponent to re-roll stuff, but I don't think it's going to be the most powerful thing in the world. And finally, the last card in this review video, we're talking about Turk Barrett Mind Gym. Super rare, 3-drop bolt character that says Energize, you may deal 1 damage to target character die, and then while Turk Barrett is active, when you spend a mask energy to use a global ability or field a character die, deal 1 damage to target character die. This card single-handedly pulls Iceman from the tier 2 depths up into this tier 1 range. The fact that you can get this and Iceman out, both of which again are bolt characters, which is super important, attack with Iceman, and then in the globals portion pull him back with a mask, thus giving you the ability to ping him with Turk Barrett on the while active ability and deal damage that way, means you don't have to rely on global abilities like Wand, which makes you lose a life, and it's just another way to push damage with Iceman, because you could also use action-based things like Thrown Brick, or you can use attune damage with another low-cost bolt character in Volo. The fact that there's so many different ways to actually ping Iceman now, including this Turk Barrett, is super solid, and this helps just add more to that. I mean, the craziest thing you can do with this is like attack with the Iceman or attack with even this technically, and then Clayface in some masks, which triggers Turk Barrett to deal the damage to Iceman and deals 2 to your opponent, and then use the mask to pull back whatever you're attacking with, which does the whole trigger again. And this ability does technically stack. If you pay 2 masks, this deals 2 damage. So pulling back 2 characters with static field means you deal 2 increments of that 1 damage to Iceman, dealing 4 damage to your opponent. This is going to get crazy fast, and this is an amazing card for that team because this is sort of an integral piece to that team. I'm giving this a B+, and I could honestly be convinced to move this into the A-. It'll just depend on how well Iceman does going forward. So those are all of the Infinity Watch characters ranked A through F. What did you think about this ranking system? Do you appreciate seeing these rankings? Do you agree or disagree with any of these rankings? Let me know in a comment below. If you watched all the way through this video, also let me know that in a comment below, and feel free to give this a like and a subscribe. I will be making more of these. The next one we're going to talk about is Black Order. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and as always everybody, thanks for watching.